Hi, and thank you for being here. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to watch this video, and if you feel inclined to subscribe to the channel, it would mean so much to me. It truly would. Now, let's get into it. I'm Thomas, and I've had to come to terms with a painful realization. Sometimes the people you trust the most can betray you in ways that leave your world completely shaken. It all started with what was supposed to be a simple, carefree trip for Michelle and her close friends. What should have been a fun getaway ended with me calling off our engagement, completely devastated after seeing footage that shattered everything I believed about the woman I thought I'd marry. At that point, Michelle and I had been together for 3.5 years. While I wouldn't describe that time as pure bliss, there was a deep and meaningful bond between us. We first crossed paths at a backyard cookout through mutual acquaintances. From the beginning, our connection felt effortless, natural even. That night, I learned she worked as a dental hygienist at a nearby clinic, while I was working as a software engineer at a mid-sized firm in the financial sector. From there, our relationship grew steadily. We shared the same core values, how we viewed family, money, and the future. Michelle had a warm, sociable nature. She made friends easily, yet she also valued the calm intimacy of quiet nights in. We complemented each other in a way that made everything feel balanced. I never had a reason to question her honesty. Maybe that was my blind spot, but she came across as genuine in both the little things and the bigger issues. She always told me where she was going and roughly when she'd be back. If work stressed her out, she would open up about it. I genuinely believed she was transparent, and that our trust in each other was rock solid. Like most couples, the novelty eventually faded into routine. As our schedules got busier, I suggested we take the next step and move in together. After a few months of searching, we found a great apartment and made it our home. Around the same time, I was pursuing a promotion that would give us greater financial stability as we planned for marriage. Living together gave our relationship a fresh sense of momentum. We created simple routines that became our anchors: Sunday morning coffees on the balcony, walks by the river in the evenings, dinners we cooked together while talking about everything and nothing. These little traditions weren't glamorous, but they felt authentic and grounding. Of course, we had our share of disagreements, but we always handled them with respect and calm. Every inside joke, every future plan we made, every peaceful evening only deepened my belief that we were building something lasting. Everything seemed to be unfolding just as it should. I proposed on our 3rd anniversary during a trip to the mountains. It was just the two of us, watching the sunset after a long hike on a trail we'd stumbled upon earlier that day. Before I even finished asking, she was already crying. That entire weekend, we were buzzing with excitement, talking endlessly about the future we were going to build as husband and wife. Wedding planning with Michelle was actually fun. She had clear preferences, but always made sure I had a say in everything. Together, we picked a venue that held meaning for us both. We chose a menu that blended both of our family traditions, and we carefully curated a guest list filled with the people who mattered most to us. I was certain Michelle was as enthusiastic about our upcoming marriage as I was. Her group of close girlfriends had been in her life long before I came along. They'd seen each other through countless ups and downs: relationships, job shifts, family crises, milestones. I knew them fairly well myself, and I got along with a few of their partners. So when Michelle mentioned they were planning a trip to Las Vegas, I didn't think twice. She told me they were planning a long weekend escape, good food, entertainment, and quality time together. I encouraged her to go. She had never been to Vegas, and I thought it was great that she'd get to experience it with people she cared about. I had zero reason to suspect anything was off. A few weeks before her trip, I joked about how funny it would be if some of the guys tried to crash their plans. She laughed and firmly told me it was strictly girls only. She explained that they had all agreed to set aside that time to focus on their friendships without distractions. Even though I had only been teasing, I couldn't completely shake the thoughts that Vegas tends to bring up. So I mentioned a few stories I'd heard, instances where couples fell apart after reckless decisions made in Vegas. Michelle answered calmly, and clearly. She promised nothing like that would ever happen with her. The way she spoke felt genuine, and I trusted her. I'd always believed she had strong principles and knew where to draw the line. As her trip approached, we had some heartfelt conversations. We spoke about how much we'd miss each other and how excited we were for the wedding. She said she was looking forward to the trip, but what she truly anticipated was coming home and diving back into our life together. We laughed about the tacky souvenirs she might bring back, and even made a light-hearted pact to check in with each other each night while she was gone. We'd heard stories about couples who let distance cause problems, and Michelle assured me that would never be us. "It's just the girls, Thomas, nothing shady," she said with a firm shake of her head. She told me what we had was far too important to risk for something meaningless. Her words were so full of love and certainty, and I believed her completely. She said she couldn't understand why anyone would throw away a relationship like ours for a fleeting thrill. To her, what we had was sacred. She reminded me how much she was looking forward to coming home and officially becoming my wife. All of it gave me a sense of peace. I felt secure in our bond and confident in the woman I had chosen. That last week before she left, we spent as much time together as we could, neither of us knowing just how badly those promises would be broken. The night before she flew out to Vegas, we shared a quiet, romantic dinner at home. Michelle had walked me through her travel itinerary and shown me the hotel where she and her friends had made reservations. We laughed about how she'd probably end up losing a little money at the slot machines, but agreed the entertainment would be well worth it. She assured me she'd check in when she could, though she also emphasized wanting to be fully present with her friends rather than constantly on her phone. I dropped her off at the airport, kissed her goodbye, and reminded her to soak up every minute and make memories she'd cherish forever. Just before heading into the terminal, she wrapped her arms around me tightly and told me she loved me more than anything else in the world. She said she couldn't wait to come back and share all her stories. Watching her walk through those sliding airport doors, I felt a flicker of unease about her heading into the unpredictable energy of Vegas. Still, I comforted myself with the knowledge that she was surrounded by friends I knew and trusted. Everything seemed to go smoothly at first. On the first day, she sent me a couple of warm messages letting me know they had landed safely and were settling into the hotel. One of the photos she shared showed her and the other girls in their suite, all smiling and clearly excited for the days ahead. I responded with encouragement, wished her a fun trip, and went back to focusing on work. Day 2 unfolded in a similarly uneventful way. She messaged me in the morning to say they were heading out to explore the city, and by afternoon she had sent another update from a lunch outing. They all looked like they were having a great time, and it matched everything she'd told me about keeping the trip lighthearted and fun. But that night, just after 10 p.m., I got an unexpected message from my friend Ryan. His girlfriend Amanda was also on the trip, and she'd been sending him various photos and videos throughout the day. Ryan said he thought I should see a few clips that featured Michelle. The first video was taken at a casino earlier that afternoon. Michelle and her group were clustered around a blackjack table, laughing and sipping drinks. But they weren't alone. Several unfamiliar men were standing with them. Judging by the body language, these guys weren't just passing by. They had clearly become part of the group. What struck me immediately was how at ease Michelle looked around these men. Her interactions with them suggested more than casual acquaintance. It clashed with everything she had told me before leaving, that this would be a girls-only trip with no outside involvement. Then Ryan sent me a second video, this one from later that evening at a nightclub. The same men were present again, and the atmosphere was loud and chaotic, full of music and alcohol. What I saw next hit me like a punch to the gut. Michelle was on the dance floor, her body pressed tightly against one of the men from the earlier clip. They were dancing in a way that left little room for interpretation. She was grinding against him, his hands holding her hips, both of them clearly lost in the moment. She was laughing, clearly intoxicated. I replayed the video again and again, hoping I had misunderstood what I was seeing. But there was no ambiguity. It was unmistakably Michelle, the woman I was supposed to marry in just a few months, wrapped up in something that completely betrayed the commitment we had built. Ryan explained that Amanda had forwarded the clips as casual snapshots of the night, not realizing how damaging they would be. Ryan, seeing the gravity of the situation, wanted to make sure I heard about it from him rather than finding out later. What added to the shock was Amanda's apparent lack of concern. She didn't seem to recognize anything wrong in what Michelle was doing. That made me question whether anyone in the group thought this behavior was unacceptable for someone engaged to be married. I couldn't bring myself to respond to Ryan. I was too overwhelmed trying to make sense of how the woman I loved could disregard our relationship so completely. Michelle had been firm before the trip. This was meant to be a distraction-free getaway. No flirting, no drama, and certainly no compromising situations. But now, here she was, acting like someone single, behaving in a way that completely violated the boundaries we'd both agreed on. This wasn't an accidental mistake, it was an intentional action. Up to that point, Michelle had never given me a reason to doubt her. She had always been truthful, loyal, and deeply committed to our future. But the person in those videos was a stranger to me. I didn't recognize the woman I had fallen in love with, the one I had planned to marry. Calling her felt pointless. I knew exactly what would follow: denial, watered-down explanations, or desperate apologies. I didn't want empty words. I wanted the truth. So I decided to let my response speak louder than any conversation could. Michelle and I shared a group chat that included our families and bridal party. It was the main space where we coordinated all the wedding planning. That next morning, I posted a message in that group. The wedding was canceled. Within moments, replies flooded in. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, whether we were okay, and if there was any way to help. I didn't explain. Instead, I simply shared the videos Ryan had sent me. The reactions came quickly and with force. No one needed a backstory. The footage made everything crystal clear. Everyone could see for themselves exactly what Michelle had done. A few hours later, Michelle must have seen the messages. She began calling me over and over again. I didn't pick up. I wasn't ready to hear her voice. I already knew what she would say. Apologies, excuses, maybe even attempts to minimize what had happened. She kept calling, more than 20 times in a few hours. Her texts started flooding in, begging me to believe I had misunderstood, insisting she needed to explain, pleading that she couldn't lose me over something she swore wasn't what it looked like. But I didn't need an explanation. I had already seen everything I needed. The following day, she began contacting my friends, hoping they could convince me to talk to her. Most of them told her directly that my response was justified, considering the content of those videos. Michelle tried to argue that the dancing didn't mean anything, that it wasn't serious, and nothing else had happened. But how was I supposed to believe that? How could I ever be certain? Later that day, Amanda messaged me to say that Michelle had decided to cut her trip short. She was flying home that evening, desperate to repair what she'd damaged. Amanda added that Michelle still believed there was hope for us. But for me, the decision had already been made. Nothing Michelle could say would ever erase what I had seen. While Michelle was still en route home from her Vegas getaway, I spent the day removing every trace of her from our shared apartment. One by one, I packed the belongings she'd brought when we first moved in together, placing them carefully into boxes. I loaded everything into my car and drove it all to her parents' house, where I left the boxes on the front steps, alongside a note explaining she would need to stay there for now. After returning to the apartment, I contacted a locksmith to change the locks. I then began the tedious work of removing her name from our lease and utility bills. The process felt emotionally detached, maybe even heartless, but I knew I had to set clear boundaries about what was and wasn't acceptable going forward. There was too much to accomplish in a single day, but this was the only path I could see toward a clean break. Late that night, Michelle arrived back to find her key no longer worked. She called from outside, crying and pleading with me to let her in so we could talk. Through sobs, she insisted the videos didn't show the full context, that things weren't as serious as they looked, and that she would do anything to repair the damage. I told her through the door that her belongings were at her parents' place and that it was best she stay there while we figured out what came next. She kept asking to speak face to face, convinced that if I heard her out, I'd understand things differently. But I had already seen enough. Over the following days, friends and family began reaching out on her behalf in an attempt to change my mind. Her mother called, saying Michelle had made a terrible mistake, but that it didn't reflect the person she truly was. Her sister went so far as to show up at my job, asking me to at least give Michelle a chance to explain before making any permanent decisions. But none of their words could undo what had already been done. Michelle had made specific assurances about how she would conduct herself on the trip. But once she felt free from consequence, she chose to ignore every one of those promises. After nearly a week of emotional appeals from every angle, I eventually agreed to meet her. We picked a neutral coffee shop so the conversation could stay calm and controlled. She dove straight into her explanation. According to her, a group of guys had joined her friends at the casino, bought them drinks, and accompanied them to a club. She described it all as innocent fun, a lively night, nothing more. But everything she recounted matched what I'd already seen on the footage. She was now giving voice to the exact scenario she had once sworn would never happen, meeting strangers, letting them into their evening, and ultimately allowing lines to be crossed. What I witnessed in the videos wasn't just a lapse in judgment. It was the result of a chain of deliberate decisions. And what about the things I hadn't seen on camera? Michelle insisted nothing further had occurred, that she hadn't left with anyone, hadn't given out her number. She said she still loved me and was deeply remorseful for the events of that night. But for me, the issue went far beyond physical betrayal. At the heart of it was trust. She had made clear commitments, and when the situation tested her, she broke them. If she could so easily disregard a mutual understanding, how could I rely on her to honor the more serious vows that marriage would require? She wept, begging me not to abandon everything we had built over what she called one terrible mistake. She promised to earn back my trust and prove her dedication to our relationship. But I reminded her that she had made similar promises before her trip, and those hadn't held up under pressure. I thanked her for meeting and speaking openly, but told her I couldn't see a future for us anymore. The damage to our foundation felt irreversible. I officially called off the wedding and took space to reflect on whether reconciliation was even possible. In the months that followed, Michelle continued to reach out. She began therapy, sent long apologies, and had mutual friends contact me to plead her case. But I came to understand something crucial. Offering forgiveness doesn't have to mean returning to the way things were. As the weeks passed, it became clearer that Michelle and I viewed commitment very differently. I had believed our engagement meant we'd already agreed to put our relationship above all other distractions. To her, that commitment seemed to fluctuate based on circumstances. Half a year after the Vegas incident, I finally gave her a conclusive answer. I wouldn't be coming back. It was one of the hardest decisions I've had to make. I had loved her deeply, and at one point believed our future together was certain. But I kept returning to the truth that once trust is broken, it rarely, if ever, returns to its original form. Promises are not just words. They represent the respect and care someone holds for the one they love. Though the breakup was incredibly painful, it pushed me to reflect on what I truly needed in a partner and where my own limits lay. Protecting my mental and emotional health became a priority. Walking away hurt in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Michelle and I had shared a life, made plans, and envisioned a future that now existed only in memory. But with time, I grew more confident that ending the engagement had been the right decision. Even if Michelle's remorse was sincere and her efforts to change were real, I couldn't see myself constantly doubting her honesty or intentions. That experience taught me to judge people more by their actions than their words, and to observe closely how they behave when temptation arises. Michelle had looked me in the eyes before her trip and made firm promises. When the moment came, she didn't uphold them. I don't think Michelle deliberately set out to destroy what we had. I believe her intentions weren't malicious. But intention alone doesn't erase broken commitments, especially not ones made to someone who trusted her fully. Often, the people we love most are the ones capable of inflicting the deepest wounds. I genuinely hope Michelle took something meaningful from the end of our relationship, something that helps her grow and become a more dependable partner in the future. As for me, I'm grateful I learned these difficult but necessary lessons about trust and boundaries before taking the step into marriage. Sometimes, it's the hardest experiences that teach us what to value most in the people we choose to build our lives with. We've now arrived at the end of this path together. I truly welcome your thoughts, so please share any impressions or insights in the comments. I'm deeply grateful that you chose to spend your time with this story. If it spoke to you in some way, I encourage you to discover more of the videos waiting on this channel. Until we meet again, I wish you well, my friend.